This video is about the story I've been reading for years, and I've reread it in a new light. It's talking about the Behemoth and the Leviathan and how they interchange. One is awake, one is asleep, and they have people who study them, live almost like they're their gods, but they're not. They're just their way of thinking, almost like Democrat and Republican, but it's earth and water. And you have the Behemoth, who represents land mass and material, and you have the Leviathan, which represents water and the depth of life. And it goes really deep. It goes really deep. It goes so far as to describe the Behemoth as being the atom, and Leviathan as being the space between material. So, like, time and space is another way of talking about Behemoth and Leviathan. One would be the material, and the other would be the non-material, time, material. When two things coincide, creates an event. That event creates parameters for measurement upon intersecting identities. Like a seed meets the ground. Those identities have intersected. So now time can do its job. Water meets sponge. Creates more like a orchestra effect of absorption. And this is the story I've been reading. And it's talking about how the stairway to heaven is like a spiraling staircase. Yeah, the spiraling staircase is a cycle, and once we can accept that cycle, we can live by a new rotation. Right now, we judge our parameters based off the sun, the moon, and things of this nature. But there is another nature to all of this. There's many natures, yeah, there's as many natures as you can have senses. However, this nature that I'm speaking of is that between the duality of these two great creatures. Now, while one will be sleeping, let's say the Leviathan is asleep and the Behemoth is awake, the people who are of the Leviathan are supposed to rise up and keep the balance, keep the harmony, and it works. And while the Behemoth sleeps and the Leviathan is awake, the Behemoth people are supposed to rise up in place of the Behemoth and keep the balance. That is to say, like, when it rains too much, you got to make sure that the land doesn't erode away. When it storms and things happen, floods just come from the ocean, hurricanes come in. How do you maintain your home is the question there in any storm for this nature. And when, let's say, the desert is a great place to talk about, where the Behemoth is but the Leviathan is not. Where the ocean would be where the Leviathan is, and the Behemoth is not. And you can find the extremes. Like, there is parts of the ocean that has no life in it. That means no Behemoth at all. Behemoth is, to my understanding from reading this, is the life in action. Where Leviathan would be the great Mother Earth, for instance. Like, it is the accumulation of the masses. So, where Behemoth is the individual aspect of the masses. And this is just from my insights, and this is just me. But when the Leviathan is out of balance, we find desert ocean. And when the Behemoth is out of balance, we find desert land. We face a new situation in this book, which is why I'm talking to you about it. The balance is off. Pretty bad. But it's also been corrupted. Now that the balance has been corrupted and it's off, this is where the story takes place. There's a few characters to mention. There's a lot of wizardry going on, a lot of alchemists throughout the story. Nature plays a big part. Animals are just as conscious and able to communicate as humans are. Things that happen on the greatest of scales happen on the smallest of scales, and things on the smallest of scales happen on the greatest of scales. Every moment is never gone. Moments in the story are like hemispheres that continue to grow. Like bark on a tree, you get a ring, you get a ring, you get a ring, you get a ring. This is what it's like. But it is not it. If you could travel through the rings of bark, if you could travel through the rings of a tree and back out without affecting the tree, you travel through the tree and back out without affecting it. That would be like what a human is in the story that I'm reading. A human is the thing that is between the Leviathan and the Behemoth. It is also the thing between these two things and understanding wisdom. Like, you've got wisdom up here, and it's a she, and she sits up there, and she's like, oh, and then understanding is up right here under her. And then below that are the Behemoth and Leviathan. And these characters, these are real characters. Understanding can work through these two things, and of course can work through wisdom. Wisdom always works through understanding, though. Always. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to work through the Behemoth and Leviathan, but it will always work through understanding. Even without knowledge. And I guess it's like, there's a word for these kind of books, like how they directly relate to real life things. However, I feel like where this book has brought it to life in such a new way for me is that it is given them personalities. Like, yes, justice is a figure. Justice has its own identity. It can often be seen as vengeance, sadly. It's best when seen with mercy. But justice in this story has a personality. Mercy in this story has a personality. All of these things that we attribute to being human attributes like wisdom, understanding, justice, and mercy are not. What I love the most about this story I'm reading is these attributes are alive. And humans are literally like bacteria that live inside of them. Humans are not the apex. No, not at all. We are symbiotic to the apex. If this makes any sense. If you've read the story, you might know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read the story, it's truly a secret. But, like, I guess I'm getting on here and talking about these secrets because, shoot, nobody else is talking to me about it. And I'm like, boom. So, have a good day.